Welcome back, dear viewers. As we said earlier, that in the first segment of our program, we are going to talk about a report that was released recently by the United Nations UNCTAD, showing that the country became the first foreign direct investment recipient in Africa. The figures show that total investments increased by 47% including 15% only from direct foreign investment. And to shed more light on the importance of this report, we are joined today by Mr. Abdel Latif. Wahba is journalist at the State Council. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Abdel Latif. As Shireen just said, the UNCTAD issued a report concerning Egypt as the first foreign direct investment recipient in the African continent. What's your take on that?
Yeah, of course, as you know, that after Egypt implemented the economic reform program along the 5 years, Egypt took many steps to encourage and to attract the foreign direct investment, while we are in a competitions with another economic giant in Africa. I mean South Africa. And there is a competition between the two countries, especially as you know that South Africa exceeded Egypt in many economic reforms, but now I think it is a natural result for our economic reform program to attract the foreign direct investment in Egypt. I think before the economic reform, we attracted about 3 billion, 4 billion, and so on, injected in the Egyptian economy. But after the economic reform program, we paved the way completely for the foreign direct investment for the local Arab foreign investor even investing in Egypt to increase their investment in their current projects in Egypt. Now I think we are targeting to attract more than $10 billion. It is a great chance for to attract more, especially in some economic sectors like transportation, like electricity, like oil and gas in Egypt. This is of course encourage also the foreign and the huge foreign corporations to come to Egypt. Before the economic reform program, we suffered from some problems, especially in public utilities, in energy, insecurity. Even before 2013, we suffered from many problems that afraid all the investors, even in Egypt, or who are trying to come to Egypt to come to invest in the Egyptian market. Now the atmosphere, the climate completely changed in Egypt. We have security, we have peace, we have the natural resources like oil and gas. We secured the energy for all, even for industries, for the factories, for the public utilities, and so on. This is on one hand. On the other hand, we have a huge network of freeways and highways, and as you know that we implemented or we achieved about more than 4,000 kilometers crossing Egypt from north to south, from the east to the west. This is of course encourage all the foreign direct investment to come to Egypt. This is on one hand. On the other hand, if you discussed the political climate in the area, especially in the Middle East, especially what happened in Syria, in Turkey, in the Gulf area, and also the expected recession in the world economy, we have the third economy growing in the world. I think this is issued by the international foundations. We achieved over 5.6 as gross domestic product in Egypt. I think this is the most characteristics of the Egyptian economy to attract the foreign direct investment just now.
Yes.
So, sir, can you elaborate on the government efforts also to establish developmental projects in different parts of the country, especially Upper Egypt?
Yeah, of course. As you know that before 2014, especially in the last 3 decades, the development was concentrated in Delta and the main cities like Cairo, Alexandria, and so on. But now we are trying to push the foreign direct investment or the investment in general, even from the public, from the Egyptian investor to invest in Upper Egypt. As you know, we amended and we created a new body and a new form of investment law. This gives incentives for the investors who wanted to invest in Upper Egypt. And at the same time, we wanted to facilitate all the procedures, especially as you know that in last year, President Abdel al-Sisi issued a decree creating a body for development in Upper Egypt, Authority for Development. I think we are trying to push a new progress in public utilities, in educations, in many aspects in Upper Egypt. On the other hand, we have a huge or a mega projects in Upper Egypt. I think it's called the Golden Triangle. That is to connect between the Red Sea and Aswan and in Asyut provinces. This is, of course, if we implemented it, I think they took many steps on ground for this project.
Yes.
This is, of course, will create new jobs, new industries, new communities, especially when you are connecting between the Red Sea and Upper Egypt. This, of course, will create a new communities on working on factories, on industries, in agricultures, and so on.
Yes. Mr. Abdel Latif, to what extent the development of the infrastructure, which did witness a great leap in Egypt recently, could attract more foreign investors for Egypt? How do you see the impact of that on the economy?
Yeah, of course. After improving our public utilities, now the investor can take his cargoes from Suez ports, for example, from Alexandria, from Demeter, from to Upper Egypt, I think easily with the freeways. This is, of course, in the past decades, I think the investors fled from investing in Upper Egypt because many problems and many conflicts over how can I get the license, how can I get the guarantee, how can I get some incentives to invest in Upper Egypt. In the new investment law, they gave many incentives for the investors to invest in Upper Egypt. This is on one hand. Now we secured all the requirements for investment in Upper Egypt too.
Also, sir, this takes us also to the importance of small and medium enterprises, as the President Abdel Sisi held a meeting yesterday to discuss this important issue with the Prime Minister and officials working in this field. So how do you see the importance of SMEs in development and solving the problem of unemployment?
Small and medium projects, this is a new body to overcome poverty, to eradicate poverty in Upper Egypt. I think some ministers in the cabinet was in a long negotiations with the international fund institution like the World Bank, for example. This is of course to secure some donations and loans at the same time for Upper Egypt. I think the World Bank loaned Egypt about $500 million. This is of course to improve the small projects in Sohag, in Kenya, and adopted about 27 projects in Sohag, 19 in Kenya provinces also. This is of course to firstly to create a small projects for the graduated, for the youths in this area. Also they have an initiatives for the woman, for empowering women in Upper Egypt via the handicrafts and the local traditional crafts and so on. This is of course an important initiative for Egypt to make the youths and the graduated depend upon themselves in establishing their special projects in Upper Egypt.
Yes. Mr. Wahba, that would bring me to shed light about Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, who announced recently a project to link the east of the Nile to its west to develop Upper Egypt again. How do you see this project, and can you shed light about it?
If you created new pivots from the Red Sea to the Nile Valley and so on, this is of course we can't consider it only a freeway or a road for connecting, but this road attracted the investor to invent and to invest in the area, to create new communities around logistic area and so on. This is of course to make also or to encourage the people to move from the crowded valley to the new area. And as you know that at the same time,
how to attract the investors there?
Because you will give and endorse it. They already endorsed it for them many incentives to invest in Upper Egypt. They give them incentives in taxes, in ending their procedures, and also they secured for them the public utilities like natural gas, energy, electricity, and so on. This is of course a huge incentive for the investors to invest in Upper Egypt.
So, sir, to what extent the infrastructure projects that are carried out across the country will help in attracting more investors?
Yeah, of course. As you know that if you don't have the main infrastructures, I think it is a problem for any investors to come to invest in Egypt. You will waste your time in the crowded routes and the ways and so on. But after you launched a new project for the routes connecting Egypt from north to south, from the east to the west. This is core, and at the same time you connected the the ports with the logistic and industrial zones. You created many industrial zones in Elmenia, in Sohag, and also we have a new projects in Aswan at the same time. So as you know that we have the huge solar power planet, Bimban in Aswan. This is of course will attract the investors to work there. Especially you attracted already many international companies working in Aswan.
Yes. So that would bring me to ask about the investors. Are they now interested in different areas than before, like the IT, the information technology, with the government's decision to digitalize the state entities and the gas with the new offshore discoveries? Are we going to witness that investors would be interested in new fields and domains?
Yeah, of course. As you know that the international companies and the institutions want facilities in communications.
Of course.
They don't want a daily routine working by documents and sending it and so on and waiting, and this is of course I think it is important for them to attract all the investors to work in Egypt. Especially you will have your service and also pay digitally. I think it will also overcome and routine and also corruption at the same time, because dealing face to face may be a way to corruptions, but now you can use your technology to do what you want as you are in your office, for example, and at the same time, as you know that Minister of Investment created one open door for all the investors, or window for all the investors. This is of course in order not to seek a license from, for example, 27 authorities and corporations and so on. But you can
facilitate the process for the investors.
and you can present your request and also respond during a specific time.
Indeed.
So what are the promising fields of investments in the country right now?
I think they are still trying to get more incentives in Egypt. This is, I think, it is maybe a natural request for the investors, as you know, the political situations in the area, what happened in Turkey and what happened for its currency and the interest rate in Turkey. This is of course many investors removed with their projects from Turkey, trying to to find safe climates for their investment. I think Egypt is eligible to attract all the investors from Europe, even also in East Asia. As you know, that the Chinese has just now a huge investment in Egypt. We have an international company like Bombardier working in Egypt just now. They are establishing the monorail connecting from the administrative capital to 6th of October city and so on.
Yes, Mr. Wahba, that would bring me to ask about the efforts that the Egyptian administration is exerting in order to show to the whole world the development, the economic reform that was taking place in Egypt and still taking place. We have witnessed recently the visit by His Excellency Abdel al-Sisi to France to participate in the G7, then to Japan for TICAD, representing not only Egypt but the whole of Africa, and we are expecting of course, a very important African-Russian summit which will take place in Sochi next month. So how all these efforts are marketing for Egypt abroad and for the investors to come here and invest in Egypt?
I think it is important. If you see, for example, President Abdel al-Sisi call in G7 for the investors to come to invest in Africa, this is will not be a benefit for African countries only, but as you know that the international community dealing with Egypt as a new gate for the African market. So if you attracted when you call for attracting new investment in Africa, this is of course will pass via Egypt. This is on one hand. On the other hand, as you know that any investors working in Africa can use also Egypt as a gate for export to Europe, to Asia, to any country.
Indeed.
So I'd like to thank you, Mr. Latif Wahba, journalist at the State Council. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Nice to be here.
And now our dear viewers, a short break, and after that we'll be back to resume the segments of our show for today, so stay tuned.